Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to bury Michigan all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to bury Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the Michigan Game Day edition of our show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us in just a few minutes is the radio play-by-play voice of our Wolverines, Doug Karsch. Well, it's finally here. Opening day in the Big House and the start of another season. It won't be the same without Jim roaming the sidelines or Sharon Moore directing the offense, but I truly believe the staff will be prepared and motivated to get the job done against ECU. Earlier this week, Jim met with the media briefly and talked about what it feels like to know he's missing the first 3 games.
When people say I've heard people comment it's a slap on the wrist, it's more like a baseball bat to the kneecaps or to the shoulder. That's what I equate everything to football. I've never missed 3 games, unless it was for a broken arm or a dislocated shoulder.
Jesse Minter also met with the media and said he looks forward to the challenge on Saturday.
The cool thing is, Coach is here all week. I think it's maybe the scenario is different if he's out of the building or if he's not around, and there's so many more things to keep your pulse on. Certainly want to be a resource for our offense. Want to be a resource for our special teams. Want to be able to manage the game in a way Coach Harbaugh would and make him proud and really just prove him right. And so certainly leaning on all the resources I have available and look forward to the challenge.
The hype for this season is through the roof. We all know that. The team knows what is expected, as does the staff. They have to shut out the noise from the off-field drama and concentrate on the task at hand, beating ECU. My guest today says he thinks they will do just that. But then again, you don't know until they tee it up for real. We taped the interview while he was heading to Ann Arbor to tape with Jim, so the audio is a bit off at times, and I apologize for that. Up next is the radio play-by-play voice of our Wolverines, Doug Karsch. Here with us on our game day segment of the show this week as we get ready for the opener is the radio play-by-play voice of our Wolverines, Doug Karsch. Great to have you back with us, Doug.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's so crazy busy for you and for all of us, and we're waiting in anticipation for the opener on Saturday in the Big House. Just a great time of the year, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I watched like 10 hours of week 0 action, and the games were awful. The matchups were terrible, and I didn't even care. Which is typically the case. And you better believe with now basically the sport being turned over to the networks, the TV networks, that week 0 as we knew it is going to change. There is no way, given the money that's being shelled out, that they're going to not turn week 0 into a revenue stream with games that will get ratings. I mean, even that Notre Dame Navy game was one of the highest rated Notre Dame games in some time. So you can imagine what they could get if they put real football games. It's funny, ESPN came out with a list of the bottom 10 teams in college football. They do every week, and they keep it updated. 5 of those teams played in the 7 games last weekend. So it just goes to show how bad it was. And yet, yes, it's a very exciting time, and probably about as exciting a time for Michigan fans as it's been in, 20, 25 years, back to having anticipation of what kind of season might lie ahead. I really can't remember the last time where the expectation before the year from maybe both Ann Arbor and Columbus was that Michigan was going to have a better team.
It's been a long time. Yeah, I mean, everyone is so jacked up about getting this season underway. Seems like in some ways it was just yesterday that we were playing TCU, and here we are. And as we get ready for Saturday, I know talking to a lot of our fan base, seems a lot of them think they can coach these first 3 games and make the calls. But it is interesting, we know with Jim on the sidelines for the first 3 weeks, interesting how he has set up this coaching rotation, isn't it?
It is, and I think they've made the most of the situation. They've given guys who have aspirations to be head coaches opportunities to put that hat on and put the headset on for a day and fulfill that role. It's going to be intriguing to see. I mean, you do have to make adjustments during the game where Jesse Minter, as defensive coordinator, might have his hands full with other duties, and so somebody else is going to have to make those adjustments. And it's incredibly important that the team understands the assignment, which is to go out and to take care of business, which, started a month ago, and even before that, started in the spring. But the reality is they need to make sure that it doesn't come down to any coaching decisions, which we can sit here and say that there's no way in heck that that's going to be the case. But I'm sure that's what Notre Dame thought last year in their home opener against Marshall. And so, crazy stuff happens in college football. East Carolina has lost a ton off of last year's team. It's hard to imagine them because they've had a decent program at times. It doesn't feel like it's going to be one of their stronger teams. But part of showing you're a championship caliber team is taking care of business. This is a veteran team. They know what got them there. And they've had a lot of people patting them on the backs, the back-to-back Big Ten and back-to-back wins over Ohio State. But I will say that it's pretty clear that the back-to-back playoff losses left a sour taste in some people's mouth. I think one of the more interesting things I heard players that came back say was they literally were talking about coming back as they walked off the field against TCU because they felt like it was a blown opportunity and they couldn't go out like that. So I think they know the assignment, but they got to go out and prove it.
We all know, as we keep saying, the expectations are so high for this team, not only collectively, but for individuals as well. And, you start with J.J. McCarthy. In what ways or areas of his game do you think he's going to be better this year?
Well, he's called a lot of his own plays, and they say he's going to be able to change coverages or change protections and change routes to the line of scrimmage. He's not calling his own plays. He has the ability, the authority to do so. He put on some weight and wants to be stronger, and be able to take the pounding of a college season. But mostly it's just, the deep ball, I think, is something, but we're talking about minute details. I heard Roman Wilson on Sam Webb's show out of Ann Arbor talking about the attention to detail that they have focused on is how you line up your shoes when you take them off, how you stack the weights on the weight racks where the M is in the same place every single time. And when you set your Gatorade bottle, which way is the G facing when you set the Gatorade bottle down? And these things are all instilled in them in the weight room. But it's not about, stacking the weights that's going to win you games. It's about these are how we're going to pay attention to all the little details. And from JJ on down, we have to be, painfully exact with all the little details so that, it matters on these things add up and matter on game days. And I think it's fine tuning is what it is. And So I think that's JJ, but I think it's everybody. It's about the fine tuning.
Yeah, and when you look at everybody, Blake and Donovan in the backfield, healthy, another maybe Joe Moore award-winning line. We have to see it, but sure looks like that could be the potential, and a great group of wide receivers. I mean, all the pieces are there.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a good pair at the top with Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson at the wide receiver spot. I think it's important that some other unproven guys emerge for a variety of reasons. But if anybody gets banged up, it's Tyler Morris, who everybody raves about, Carmelo English, Fred Moore, Darius Clemens. Whose time is it to step up and to start making plays? I think that's the one area offensively. I think it's kind of the only area offensively that there's any question about. Maybe I worry a little bit anytime you change the center, but if if Drake Nugent was a captain and a student athlete at Stanford, he's bringing a lot to the table in terms of intelligence that you need to play that position. And if he doesn't win the spot, that means Greg Crippen was better than him. So, I think the offense is in really, really good hands.
When we talk about the receivers, a lot of the fans I talk to say we need to get more production from those guys, more consistency this year. When you look at last year's offensive play ratio, 61% run, 39% pass. Do you think that's going to change this year where we're going to throw the ball more to these guys?
Jim Harbaugh said he wants it to. He wants to be 50-50, and he says in theory that's what he really wants to be this year, but that doesn't mean it's going to be 50-50. I think it's awfully tempting when you have an NFL caliber offensive line and two NFL running backs to just hand it off and take it. I mean, Donovan Edwards averaged over 7 yards a carry last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's incredible. And the only running back to have a better season than that was Tyrone Wheatley in terms of yards per carry. And he's the number 2 back. So, he may threaten that yards per carry record. He may threaten the record for most receptions out of the backfield. Chris Perry set at 44 in a season. So, I mean, there's a lot of weapons at their disposal, but got to be tempting just to hand it off 35, 40 times a game to those two and just let them do work. But, you want to be as balanced as you can. Look, the fact that they were so imbalanced might have been one of the reasons why they kept getting loose deep late in the year against Ohio State. Over-the-top touchdowns in the Fiesta Bowl. Teams didn't expect it, and it was a bit of a secret weapon. I mean, a quarter of Roman Wilson's production came in the Fiesta Bowl alone. Yeah. So it's there. They can play that card, and they can show it during the season if they want, or they can just run the table and go undefeated going into Ohio State the way they did it last year, playing old school Michigan bully ball.
Well, over on the other side of the ball, though, Doug, Monday night, I should say, on the Inside Michigan Football show, John Jansen said he thinks Michigan might have one of its best all-time defensive lines, and I know Jim said, hey, let's not anoint them yet, but there is no question that front seven has just scary potential, don't they?
Yeah, Derek Moore has elite athleticism and scraping the surface of how good he can be. I thought Kenneth Grant had a very telling news conference when he said, look, last year he was limited to the number of plays he could play because he wasn't in the best shape. He's gotten in much better shape and can play more snaps per game. Mason Graham came in from day one. That sophomore class of defensive linemen has potential to be one of the great recruiting classes at a position group of all time. Braden McGregor's that guy that just kept getting better and better in the program. And Josiah Stewart, the great line about him off the edge is he's not big. He just isn't. And the practice I was at, I was double checking my roster because I'm like, is that really him? Because he definitely looks small. But Mikey Sainristil had a great line about him. He said, well, he'll take you for a ride. So he's not the biggest guy. He's got great quickness, but he's got enough strength to play the position. So, there's a lot of talent there. And Jalen Harrell, just a versatile player who's gotten better and better. So, Chris Jenkins on that same show, I'm sure you heard him say, yeah, we're going to keep the mantra, the no-name defense.
Yep.
And it worked for them last year. They were very good. And, the Fiesta Bowl wasn't their best game, but there was, two defensive touchdowns scored by TCU. And they had talent offensively now. Don't be fooled. But bottom line is, yeah, that defensive front is really, really good. And guys can take a big step forward. And I expect that they will.
The defensive front just amazing, and then Jim was mentioning likes depth and talent of the linebacking crew, and really in the secondary, maybe one raging battle at the corner opposite Will Johnson, but we're in good shape back there too.
Yeah, so you mentioned linebacker. I think one of my favorite quotes of the preseason was Jaden Hood, who's been around a while and hasn't transferred and, has waited his turn and battled and moved up the depth chart. He was asked about it, and he said, when I go to bed at night, when I dream about football, I dream about making plays in the winged helmet in Michigan Stadium. And I thought that was a cool line.
Yeah.
So it's good to see a kid that's been patient, wait his turn, get his opportunity, and I think he's going to make an impact this year. The addition of Ernest Hausman is one heck of a find. I mean, when I'm doing a game and I find myself saying the same name over and over, that's what happened with Hausman in the Nebraska game. So, to find out, when I found out they were adding him, I was like, wow, I remember him. He was all over the field against Michigan. Then in the secondary, Rod Moore, one of the smartest football players I've ever been around. And, the stories they tell of his ability to diagnose a snap, a big third down stop at State College where he knew what was coming before the ball was snapped, his interception against Michigan State where he knew what was coming and had to bait a veteran quarterback. He had to bait Peyton Thorne into making the throw that Rod Moore knew was coming, and he intercepted a pass. He's bringing that to the table. And, they say that Zeke Berry and Keon Sabb are going to get chances at safety behind Makari Page and Rod Moore. But, yeah, if they get that other corner solidified, and the addition of Josh Wallace might be exactly what they've looked for, it could be a very, very, very good defense.
Well, Doug, Michigan is a huge favorite as we look ahead to Saturday in the game with ECU. But Mike Houston he's really done a nice job building up that program, especially in the last 2 years. Have a lot of guys in NFL camps right now, so you never know what you're going to get in the opener. But would you be surprised if ECU hangs around in this one?
If they do, it's because Michigan is either, the impact of not having Harbaugh and moving other people around on the staff. We either underrated that or that the offseason was as good as everybody said. I have no reason to believe that's the case, but that would be the first sign of that being evident. I mean, East Carolina lost a 3-year starter quarterback, 1,000-yard running back, 2,000-yard receivers, and they're being replaced by some transfers. I mean, Jalen Johnson, their receiver, transfer from Georgia. They like the running back a lot compared to Jerome Bettis, although I don't quite see the comparison, but that's some of the ECU insiders were saying. But yeah, I'd be surprised if it's close. But we've seen crazy things happen in college. It's one of the things that makes college football great is that crazy stuff can happen. You just don't want it to happen to your team on any given Saturday.
No, you don't. Well, final question before we let you get away, Doug, because I know you're busy today. So as we said at the top of the show, great time of the year, expectations always high for Michigan football. Any year, doesn't matter. But in all the years I've been around the program, it's going back a long time, I've never seen it this high. But you know what? It's justifiable this time, isn't it?
Feels that way. I mean, it's odd. I was thinking how the excitement for this season compares to previous years. And oftentimes in previous years, fans are excited to see the new weapon or to see the new player or to see the highly regarded recruit. And there's not nearly as much of that this year because it feels like they're kind of just bringing back the same team. Certainly not everybody, not Ronnie Bell and guys that fans came accustomed to watching play, but I mean, it's kind of the same team. So the excitement is centered around, everybody getting better, but there's not a whole lot of new toys to unveil. So it's a different feel than I can remember in seasons past. There's not a hotshot freshman that everybody can't wait to see. Not saying those guys won't make impact. It's the same crew coming back and trying to repeat their success of the past 2 seasons. Quite frankly, that might be the best excitement to have, better than unwrapping new toys under the tree. This is more about, a level of consistency where the program is set up to have perhaps another real legitimate shot at a national championship.
Absolutely, and we start to get some answers this Saturday in the Big House against ECU. Can't wait. Here with us today as we get ready for the big home opener has been the radio play-by-play voice of Meeechigan Football, Doug Karsch. Doug, we can't wait to tune in on Saturday, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me.
On Quick Hits today, Jim had some injury updates for us earlier this week. Receivers Tyler Morris and Peyton O'Leary were dinged up. They could both be available this week. If not, they'll be back next week. Also working through injuries are safeties Makari Page and Rod Moore. They might be available on Saturday. Amorian Walker is also battling an undisclosed injury, and Jim said he just needs time to get healthy. Here are some game day notes of interest. This will be the first meeting between Meeechigan and ECU. Head coach Mike Houston is 22-24 in 4 years there, and is 102-49 in his 12 years as a head coach. Last year, the Pirates were 8-5 overall, 4-4 in the AAC. They appeared in the Birmingham Bowl, where they beat Coastal Carolina 53-29. They finished the season unranked. They returned just 9 starters, 4 on offense, 5 on defense. The weatherman says it will be a very warm day for the opener. Sunny skies with temps reaching the mid-80s. A slight chance of afternoon showers. So here we go. We've waited since that playoff loss to TCU to get back on the field, and now it's time. ECU is a decent team with a lot of new faces, but they do have talent. So it will be interesting to see how things shake out for us with Jim and Sharon not on the sidelines. Still, this is the kind of team we have to beat up on if we want to get the season started on the right track. Kickoff is at high noon and basically pay-per-view on Peacock if you don't have a subscription in place. Next week, we'll be back to recap the opener and look ahead to a visit from UNLV. Our scheduled guest on Tuesday's Visitors Edition is UNLV radio color analyst Caleb Herring, a former quarterback for the Runnin' Rebels. Then on Thursday's Game Day show, we'll have our first visit this season from the Angel of the Big House, Meeechigan beat writer Angelique Shengelis from the Detroit News. So enjoy the opener, everyone. Whether you're in the Big House, listening on the radio to Doug, or watching on Peacock, it's just good to have Meeechigan football back. So enjoy it. That will do it for now. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat ECU. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Meeechigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at the Meeechigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Meeechigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Meeechigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!